Hi, everyone. I'm Pip from Seymour Digital Media. You're listening to Know How Marketing Lab podcast. This podcast brings together different experts in marketing from our Facebook group, Cyberpunk Geeks Marketing Mixer. Each week, we get on here and we talk about something search marketing like Google Ads or SEO, social media marketing from Facebook to TikTok, or website marketing. If you're a marketer or aspiring marketer, a business owner or entrepreneur, this podcast for you. We're going to share the best SEO, search, social, and website strategies. We share tips and hacks, Google Ads strategies, what's going on in the current market. Each week, we discuss something exciting and awesome in marketing.
Hello, it's that time again, the time of the week for Geek Speak. And today we are going to be talking about WordPress. Is it still the top dog for your websites in 2023? And of course, my name is Phelan. I'm with Seymour Digital Media, where we focus on search engine marketing.
And I'm Greg with Original 72 Creative, and we're a full-service website graphic design digital marketing firm in Vancouver.
Awesome. So yeah, there's definitely some new buttons and new things that just popped up with doing the stream through.
To excite your life, right?
Yeah, it's like, hey, you're a little too used to how you're doing the streaming. Okay, well, here's a new update to throw you off. So yeah, we're gonna talk about, just a general kind of look around the landscape of if you're looking to upgrade your website or start a new website in 2023. We wanted to look at what are your options. I think just cards on the table at the top. You and I are both pretty strong advocates for WordPress, and we'll kind of go into why and then compare. Not necessarily like one's per se better, but there's some things that you need to consider, and there's some reasons why going with a WordPress solution might be a good one for you. But we'll definitely kind of cover it and its comparisons against other platforms that are out there in 2023.
Yeah, there's always new CMSs or current CMSs that are out there that also get upgraded and revamped and stuff like that. So it's actually nice we're doing a topic where we can do small comparisons between what's out there, because WordPress has been king for so long. Last I really checked, I knew WordPress websites powered like 33% of the internet or something. I think it's up to like 40% now, close to. So
I personally wouldn't be shocked if it was more, just like the nature of just how many people have switched over it or to have it as part of like their own. Because I think we also touched on, it's not even necessarily like you're only going to have one solution for your problem either, right? Like we were just talking about a little bit in the preamble about like maybe you're running a couple because they're tailored to specific things you're trying to do. And so that's definitely one thing to kind of bear in mind for some people, is that it's like, hey, it's not all or nothing. Like this is the one be all end all. And then also there might be at different stages at different times that you're going to want to be like, hey, for just starting out with these things I want to get done, this would be a pretty good solution for me. And then you might upgrade later on and you're like, hey, actually with the new built out team, and I've got a developer who knows how to do this stuff, that you might want to go with a different solution. And so and you're not locked in. I think that's one of the good parts that I kind of seen as well, that I think we touched about in doing the prep, is that the systems are also been a lot better at letting kind of interoperability. So it's not like you're completely locked in, because it's just that I think that was much bigger in the early aughts and the aughts and into the early teens, where it was like you're kind of like locked in.
There was definitely a time period where all of these pieces of software were coming out, and there were way less standards. People were building them the way they thought they should be built, and each were different. So communication between multiple systems was extremely difficult to do, to build APIs between them and stuff. But the standards over the years have gotten a lot better. I mean, it's not completely there. I remember, so this is maybe dating my web design and development skills, but in the early 2000s, so over 20 years ago, having to and you still have to check browsers today just to make sure. But when I built websites back then, I had to build a website, check it in every browser, and then make customizations to the code so that it looked proper in every browser. You don't really need to do that today, right? Like, for the most part, what you build, whichever CMS you would choose, pretty much works in all browsers because the browsers have developed the standards of how they render the HTML and CSS code and all of that stuff. So it's much easier now to get that consistency across everywhere that you might look at your website. I think I'm sort of went off on a tangent there, but
yeah, no, I think it's also a good example. Also, the fact that there is, was it Microsoft Edge, Firefox, and Chrome all actually are the same engine. So they all use Chromium at their base. And so that kind of took out because Microsoft was always kind of the weird one that's like, hey, you did all your like web development. And then it's like, oh, you ran it against like Internet Explorer and it doesn't work at all. And like, I know a bunch of friends who did web front end design that had that issue. But yeah, I think just generally that the standard to be like, it's been more standardized. It's easier to bring data across. Also, the best practices are they're more universalizable across it, and so it's kind of more the things that you're comparing the different website platforms against is just it's a different world now than it was 10 years ago, or even I'd say 5 years ago. And so I think that's a big one for how people are picking. I think, do we want to just start off with the list of like the kind of CMS? And I guess also just for table setting, CMS, we mean content management system. Yeah, sorry. I was just realized I'm like, we haven't actually defined that term. We should probably do that before we get too much further down.
Yeah. After 20 years, you just assume everybody knows what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like you and I were just talking about it normally, and I'm like, oh, I feel like we need to like make sure we do cover that quickly.
Yeah. Even I was talking to someone the other day and I said CRM and they had no idea what I was talking about. And CRM has been like, initials have been around for a long time, but you truly have no idea whether or not people use this lingo in day-to-day life or if it's just lingo that the professionals in the industries use to talk about stuff. So I thought exactly. From the list that I prepared, I sort of broke it out. I think the open source was probably a good spot to start with those options. Obviously, we've already talked about WordPress being the biggest and most widely used right now open source content management system out there. But two other notables that have been around for a really long time are Joomla and Drupal. I don't know if anyone's heard of those, but they've been around, I want to say, close to as long as WordPress, like not far behind WordPress.
Yeah, they're like within a few years when you go through like the data, like the first releases of them, they're all within that first, because it was like the lamp stack wars of like of the mid aughts where like it was WordPress and Drupal and Joomla were all fighting it out. And then WordPress, I don't know the history of how they took off exactly, but they were the victors of it. And so they just sort of took off and kind of left the other two. I mean, I've used a Drupal website in the last 3 years, and boy, howdy, was that painful. I'll be entirely honest with you. It was.
Was it up to date as well, or
define up to date? I mean, it was
the application itself, the website, the CMS. Was it at its current version when you were using it on the site, or was it an old version that hadn't been updated to a more current version yet?
To my understanding, it was a very recent version. I don't think it was the most up to date, but it was within that time frame, and
not 2 years old. Like updated that year, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, they had it since like 08, 09 was my understanding. So they had had that website for a really long time, and it was then they're moving off of it, and it was like an e-commerce website, and it was starting to feel its, the age of the website was starting to be noticeable when you were trying to use it.
Yeah, I found the same thing. I've worked with Joomla and Drupal before, And I always came back to WordPress being the easiest to use, especially when it comes to handing over to the client and explaining how the client can actually use the system to add, additional pages on their own and build out the menu and build their pages, add images and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do remember those old days of Joomla and Drupal and it being a lot more complex. Now, at the time, I would say those systems may have been more complex, but also more robust. Like they might have been better systems than WordPress, but WordPress always had that leg up on the usability factor. And I think that's why they became the most popular CMS in those early day wars.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. And building off of that, I would say the other thing that kind of pairs with the usability is going to be that the community and community resources. So the ability to go find, like, say your client is slightly tech savvy and we're going to wait for you on an email. The ability for a client to go off and type in WordPress, how do I add an image to a page? Like the amount of content that they could find on a YouTube or in blogs or on the community forums, right, on the WordPress.org. Like you're definitely gonna find a lot more of that content there. And so that's definitely one where I think that also kind of build, right? Because the more people you have in an ecosystem, that means that there's more plugins to add more functionality. More functionality means things get put into the core over time, and it's just kind of like it's a virtuous cycle, right? As that kind of builds. And so I think that those two things kind of work together, and it's kind of a big reason why. It's also the reason why I think we also both say that WordPress is a good one for anyone that's looking to build any website in, because if anything goes wrong, your ability to find a WordPress developer is far easier than you're going to find for anything else.
Absolutely. The other thing for a pro for WordPress, because they all have the concept of add-ons to extend the native functionality that the system has to have additional things added on, but the WordPress plugin repository by far has the most options so if you're looking for flexibility of like having a website and then being down the road being like, oh, like I want to do this, chances are there's somebody that's built a plugin to do what it is that you've come up with that you want on your site. And the other ones, like I said, the other ones do have that, but by far WordPress's options for plugins would be hands down the largest.
Yeah. Or conversely, that if you do want to add something and you're like, why doesn't that exist? There's probably a person that's posted why that can't exist because of like, if you do that, it'll break these functions and like that just will not work. Mm-hmm. And there's probably someone that's already worked through the functionality and been like, yeah, this just can't be done because of these reasons.
And before we move on to Ask CMSs, and I'll explain what that stands for in a second, I wanted to mention all of the open source stuff. Obviously, it's free, it's open source, but if you do want to extend things with some plugins, there are often free, but there are also often paid premium plugins. So the open source option is not completely free. You do have to get your own hosting, and you do, if you identify some specific functionality that you want and it's in a plugin, those could be additional costs depending on what you find to add those. So moving on to SaaS CMSs, and SaaS stands for Software as a Service, Content Management System. And these are more content management systems that you pay a monthly fee for the ability to use them. And the ones I identified for those options are Squarespace, Weebly, Wix, and also Webflow, which I know you had some things to say about that. So we'll probably get to that in a bit. But the software as a service more is like a content management system that does pretty much all of the same things that the other ones do, but it's a paid service. So your hosting ends up being with that paid service. You get all of the functionality of using their content management system. and it's a monthly fee to get access to all of that, and away you go building your site.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much, yeah. I just think of it as like someone else is taking care of the hosting. It's kind of like if you're doing WordPress and you do, I don't know, like WP Engine, and they're like, oh, we're just going to handle how that part. It's kind of like that for Squarespace, where they're like, we're going to handle all the hosting. You don't have to think about it. And in some ways that can be a real positive for people. I think that, yeah, there's definitely some pluses. There's definitely some minuses to it as well.
Probably the biggest plus I would say would be the potential of getting that assistance if you need help with your site, right? So because they're a service, there's probably going to be, a contact line or a chat that you can directly ask them, and their customer support will hopefully be good to help you through whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'd heard of like an agency that they like design your website in a weekend like that. It was like one of those, like, they make it sound like a claim. They actually did do it, but it was the trick that they did was they did everything on Squarespace. So all the hosting, all that management is all handled. And if you have any questions, they're more than happy to send you to the Squarespace support to be like, if you have a question about your domain, anything like that. And so it does make that part of it a bit easier for some agencies. And also, if you're kind of like moderately tech savvy kind of client and you're like, I need a website, and you don't have necessarily a lot of money, this might be a good option for a quick and just like, I need to get something out there that looks fairly decent and I don't have to worry about optimizing it on the back end. That can be an option for you. And again, how we kind of framed it at the very start, like that could be your beginner. And like, I just had a Squarespace site, just quick. I did it myself. It does enough of the work, but now I need to add more functionality, and it not necessarily is going to be built into Squarespace. Well, then you could look at different options of what's there. But I think for quick and just getting a website up there and getting your out there and collecting leads or whatever it needs to be, I think that's a good way, a good option.
From my experience with using any of these, I've used some of them, but not all of them, is that they are quite easy to get set up, right? Their onboarding process, when you sign up and pick a template and fill in your company name and a couple of details, for the most part they make it quite simple for you to get up and running with something that's very nice looking, because they probably do have really great templates to choose. You fill in your brand colors and drop in a logo, and you can have something like really nice for minimal effort and completely done on your own. So that's a huge plus for if you really want to get started with something right away and something simple. And the usability of these after you have it will probably differ. I mean, with WordPress and the other, well, I can't really say about the other open source CMSs we talked about, but WordPress for sure, they are moving a lot closer to like a drag and drop building page experience. And I think Square, Weebly, Wix, and Webflow as well are really geared towards that drag and drop, no code type of page building process. But there is a learning curve to figure out. Even you wouldn't think it would take a lot to learn how to drag and drop something, but there's obviously a learning curve of like moving things around and putting things in the right position and things like that. But it is really geared towards that visual page builder where you don't need to know like any code at all, and they'll have varying usability, I guess. Some of them might be a little bit more difficult. Some of them might be a little bit easier, but they all should be fairly easy for people.
Yeah. They're definitely, I would say they're fairly easy. I found the Wix one to be the buggiest, because if you have any sort of ad blocker open, boy howdy, does that mess it up. It does not like an ad blocker, which is something I learned the hard way. And so there's definitely some issues. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of any sort of drag and drop system, is it's going to be a little bit buggy. I mean, the libraries that they're based on has gotten better, but even like Webflow, which is like probably the most advanced for drag and drop, because like I've heard a lot of interviews where they basically broke React, the system that Facebook built. They had to break it because it wasn't fast enough and it didn't do close enough to what they needed. So they actually had to like make their own version of it. It was interesting, but the thing that instantly makes me concerned, especially like the two of them that we kind of mentioned, Webflow, how long is Webflow going to exist? And then if their stuff needs to get, if they say they run out of cash and then all of a sudden no one wants to buy them, does your website go away? If your website goes away, can you restore the data? Like, these are all things that,
That's a good point you bring up. All of these software as a service options, the website, while it's your website online and people can go to it and it represents your business, the minute you're not interested in paying for that service anymore, your website goes away. You don't get that website, right? You get the content, because all of the content you added and the images you added, potentially, if you're not using images that they're providing you, are all yours, and you'll get that back. But you're basically starting from scratch if you want to leave that and move to then a self-hosted, open source, or any other platform. Really, all you get is your content, and you need to build another complete site for yourself. So that's one drawback of going this way to consider.
Want to know more about SEO? We've got a class for that. Our mission is to educate students about the right tools, techniques, and strategies to grow their businesses using the most up-to-date search engine marketing optimization techniques and tools. Find out more at knowhowmarketinglab.com.
Yeah, it's definitely, well, that makes me always paranoid, is like, or the other one is Weebly, who is now owned by Square. And, say some company takes over your website hosting, maybe they break something. Like, maybe they say, we don't like that functionality, we don't want to pay for that that hosting on it, and all of a sudden part of the functionality breaks down. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Weebly, but it's one of those things that someone taking it over now, there's new ownership, you don't know what's going to happen with your website, how it's hosted, all these other things that you need to consider in a landscape where the players change and different companies get bought. This also, I'm going to use this as a nice segue to do our last segment, which is going to be your e-commerce options. So just like Weebly got bought, one of the ones that did got bought in the e-commerce space was Magento. In basically I think it was at the start of, it was mid 2020, I think, that they got finalized. The shotgun wedding between Adobe and Magento. It was one of those ones where neither side of the community wanted this, but they're like, okay, you're getting this. I hope you're happy. And I don't think anyone was out of that part. And it's definitely can be a situation like that where you don't even want to be bought out, or you don't want your system to be owned by another company, but it just happens that that's what happened. Oh, it was 2018. Sorry.
That was a while ago now. Wow.
Yeah. It might have.
So,
well, it also.
I forgot about it.
Yeah. Well, it also might have like started because they're like, just because you announce it doesn't mean it's like, oh, we're fully integrating this, right? Because it's a little bit like merging two completely different code bases.
Yeah, because before that, I would have even lumped Magento into just the open source CMS category. It originally was sort of one of those ones in that group of three that we originally talked about.
Yeah.
An option was Magento, and they at some point became, I think, a lot more e-commerce focused and sort of separated themselves from just being your traditional, open source CMS choice to being something that was more geared to, like, if you want to do e-commerce and manage your website content, they were a good option. I think for the e-com options, like we did earlier, splitting them to the open source and the software as a service. So obviously WordPress is open source, and there are plugins that you can get to do your e-commerce with that platform. The biggest one would be WooCommerce. There's also a new player, not full catalog type stuff, but really easy just to sell a product or a service, like 5 to 10, even 20. but not really have that traditional categories of products type of feel. It's called SureCart, and then a long-time player as well as easy digital downloads. The other open source one that has sort of made a resurgence recently is PrestaShop. Those would be the two sort of open source options. And again, when we say open source, the plugins typically are free. I think SureCart possibly is a paid e-commerce add-on, but WooCommerce is free. But if you want more than what the traditional WooCommerce e-commerce application gives you, there are paid plugins to extend and give you more functionality to populate your store and do whatever it is you need to do on your site.
Yeah, exactly. I would also say that the WooCommerce is built by Automatic, the people who do the main core updates for WordPress itself. So they're seeing it more as like the full scope of being part of that core feature set. And so that's definitely one thing to kind of consider. Also, just to kind of add a little bit to the open source, it's that the code of how the application works is completely open, that anyone can see it. Whereas something like Shopify, you do not see how that code works. Yeah. That stuff is hidden, and they will open up little spots that you can connect to and get some data back from. Like you can make little requests to it, but they're not showing you how the whole system works. And so that's one little distinction, and that's why there's a bunch of plugins that can be built, is because anyone can look at it and go like, hey, this function, I bet I could extend this out so it'll do XYZ things. Mm-hmm. And then that's how the plugin system kind of works interconnected, versus like the Shopify apps, which are, hey, we're going to allow you to do these things with products. We're going to allow you to do these things with orders. And like, if you don't like that, well, tough. That's all they're going to get.
Do you want to go through the software as a service options?
Yeah. So there's definitely the big one, my favorite for the e-commerce, and I think we'll build on it a little bit based on kind of what we were talking about at the start, was like Shopify, right? It's the big one. It's our big Canadian e-commerce giant. It's a fully hosted. Theirs is also, just fun fact, it is fully dedicated. Each individual store is a small sandbox. Like, you're not sharing any, like, your own little weird self-contained Ruby on Rails, like, little application that's going. That's kind of a byproduct of, like, it was started in 2006, and that was the way to do it at the time. They all jokingly said we probably would do it a little differently now if we could, but, there's still websites. I've seen websites in there from 2006 that are still going. Mm-hmm. And so they can't exactly, it's the same with WordPress. So you can't change too much. But I think that's the big beast in the room. I think, we were talking about, this would be a good time to talk about, like, quickly go over, like, hey, there's some applications that are going to be really good for blogging, just doing the content side of it, where WordPress is going to be like your strong suit. And then if you want to sell some stuff, you might add on WooCommerce. That's a potential to make it something a little more hybrid. But like you were asking about whether Shopify could be used as like a content management system all by itself. And I would say, do not do that. I would say very much do not do that. That is not what it's built for. It is built for a store that is selling products. You may have some content that goes with it, which I definitely have some content on your website that goes with it. How-to, stuff like that. But it is not meant for, it's meant to handle e-commerce payments, connecting to marketing channels to help you extend your e-commerce functionality with ads and stuff like that. So integrating with Microsoft, integrating with Google, integrating with Meta. That's what its bread and butter is. Doing payments, doing payment risk for you. All that stuff is what they do. And they expressly say, like, we might add these features, but it's not our core competency.
Yeah, and by far Shopify for the software as a service e-com is the biggest. There are obviously the other one we mentioned earlier, Magento, which is more e-commerce focused, and as well there's a BigCommerce, which I thought would be a good one to mention because they're a pretty good e-com option, which also integrates with WordPress, but they are their own application mainly. Yeah. And other than that, I know we did the e-com quickly, but did you have any other comments on e-com?
Well, also just to touch on just before we go is that you're going to see ones like Squarespace and Wix that offer e-commerce functionality. And while they do offer some e-commerce functionality, like I'm not going to say they're better as a situation where you have a blog and maybe you sell a couple of products, like nothing crazy, but you have one or two products that you're selling. That might be a good option for getting your toes wet, seeing what people buy, seeing where people are coming from, seeing how your marketing's working. I'm a big fan of test it, see how that works, make sure your funnel's working before you want to go for a full Shopify site where you're selling. I think you and I talked about like WooCommerce and Shopify are better for, I have collections, I have categories that I'm selling like groups of products in. In WordPress or Wix and Squarespace, are better for maybe one or two products. And also the same, like you mentioned, SureCart is just like I said at the very top, this could be something where you stair step. You may get to a certain point where this platform doesn't meet my needs. I need to look for what options are out there and then base it on, I'm selling this many products. I'm looking for these type of apps that will help me do these type of functions and look for it that way.
Yeah, I think I would classify it more as, do you have products that you are physically going to have people buy and ship to them? Or do you have a product that is basically just a service that people need to subscribe to and send you a payment because they bought that service from you, type of a thing? It's not really a product as in like a mug or a whatever it is you're buying, a physical product that you're shipping out. If that's the case, usually the Shopify or WooCommerce is the better option. The other ones can do that because e-commerce is really basically posting, this is what it is and this is how much it costs, buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it with all those other ones, but those two bigger players are really focused on having a full store where you can categorize all of the products that you sell. And
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I jokingly said a little half-hearted, like little joke of like, sometimes boring is good. Something stable is good for you as a business owner. That's definitely something to consider. Don't go for the new shiny object because you do not want your website disappearing in 6 months to a year. Having something stable that works is always, I lean towards that above pretty much everything because you've got enough other stuff that's going insane and crazy around your business. You don't need that too. My name's Phelan.
And I'm Greg. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
The conversation never stops in our Facebook group, Cyberpunk Geeks. Join us at facebook.com/groups/cyberpunk geeks to ask your questions, meet new friends, and learn even more about search, social, and websites.